Hello, everybody. My name is Juliana Diaz, and today I will be talking about comprehensive sexual education in schools. So, first, what is comprehensive sexual education, and what does it mean to teach it? Comprehensive sexual education is providing information about bodily development. This includes things such as puberty, um, changes that kids this age are encountering with their bodies. Sex, sexuality. This is something that at this age and during high school and late middle school, they are starting to have questions about. Relationships. What is healthy? What is not? At this age, they're starting to have a romantic interaction with others and communication regarding decisions about any of these topics. So, how should they approach if they have a question? How should they approach it? Who should they approach? Why should they approach it? And why it is important to open up about things like this. To teach it means to incorporate this curriculum into places such as high school or late middle school. My research question is, should comprehensive sex education be taught in schools? Yes, comprehensive sex education should be taught in schools. Why? It can help avoid negative health consequences. This includes things such as sexually transmitted infections, teen pregnancies, and unwanted illnesses. So, it can also help target healthy and unhealthy actions. You can now identify things that are harassment, consent, and what what are you really comfortable with. It also helps communication. Like I mentioned previously, it helps kids understand what they should speak up about. If they have any questions, how should they approach it and who should they approach them to? Comprehensive sex education also helps them understand value of theirs and others' bodies. So, when you teach these kids about their bodies, they now know the value that it holds to them, and they can now respect others' bodies. It also helps an individual's academic performance due to the fact that they now know about the consequences of these actions and they don't do them. Statistics, data, and facts. A national survey of family growth found that teenagers who were taught comprehensive sex education were 50% less likely to experience teen pregnancy than those who did not. States that cover expenses regarding sex education have the lowest pregnancy rates. Advocates for Youth, which is a group that helps topics like these, did reviews on sex ed programs and found that those programs found a statistical decline in HIVs and other sexually transmitted infections. The National Campaign to End Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy studied 48 comprehensive sex educational groups. Out of these 48 comprehensive sex ed groups, they found that 60%, which is more than half, reduced unprotected sex that people were having. Who supports this? The Office of Adolescent Health supports this. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services support this. The President's Teen Pregnancy Prevention Initiative and the Personal Responsibility Education Program. Now, let's talk about how we know that they support this. We know that they support this because there is no federal funding for comprehensive sex ed groups. All of these groups that I just named donate and give money to states for comprehensive sex ed groups. It is up to the states whether they choose them or not. They also keep track of the progress that comprehensive sex ed groups are making and all the positive outcomes to them and why we should have them. No, comprehensive sex ed should not be taught in schools. Why? People say that sex may ruin innocence and be normalized. Because when you have sex and you're talking to kids about it like it's a normal thing, they may think, oh, hey, that's a totally normal thing to feel and do. Some people say that it violates certain beliefs, morals, or cultures. And it is true because some religions, some cultures lead to the beliefs and morals of abstinence. And abstinence is basically you need to wait until marriage to have sexual intercourse. Now, these organizations, they try to push that curriculum. Sometimes even the federal government goes into that curriculum of abstinence. Children may feel entitled to sexual pleasure. Since you're talking to them about it, and since now they have normalized it, which is their belief, they may feel like, hey, I should be feeling this. If I want to feel this, I can definitely feel this right now. And it can refer children to harmful and graphic material. Kids might get curious at that age and they look at material such as pornography and all those types of things at that age if they're being exposed to it, you know? So let's talk about the statistics, data, and facts. Now, for this particular idea that comprehensive sex education should not be taught in schools, there is a very, very, very big lack of evidence. And part of this lack of evidence comes from the fact that the organizations that push this idea upon are usually religious, moral, and sometimes you kind of have trouble fighting those with facts. So organizations who believe that establish abstinence as the ultimate goal. So like I previously said, a lot of organizations and a lot of people believe that abstinence is important and abstinence is the right thing, which is sexual intercourse until marriage. You should not have it before marriage. Um, so these normally are organizations with religious and traditionalistic views, which ultimately lead to abstinence. However, I did find two limited studies that back up these points. These studies include 1986, two 1986 studies. One is by Johns Hopkins University. He concluded that comprehensive sex education did not reduce teen pregnancy studying certain um, after studying the people in the comprehensive sex ed courses. The other one was a poll. This poll was by Lou Harris and it was commissioned by Planned Parenthood, which ultimately concluded that teens who took comprehensive sex ed were more likely to initiate sexual behavior. And that's where the idea comes from, where if you normalize it, you're going to feel entitled to do it and you're going to want to do it even more. Who supports this? Um, the people who support, not comprehensive sexual education to not be taught and they support abstinence is Family Watch International and the Bush administration. So, Family Watch International, they're this organization and they believe that you should not push sexual rights agenda towards children. They believe in very traditionalistic religious, they have those types of values and they want to push them upon us. They want to push them upon the curriculum, even though it could be wrong. Now, we know that the Bush administration also does not support this because we saw a federal funding, like a humongous rise of federal funding in the Bush administration for for abstinence sex groups. And basically abstinence sex groups do exist, because they're created by these organizations or even the government that believe that abstinence is the right way to go and it's the ultimate goal. So the federal government does fund abstinence sex ed groups, and we saw a tremendous increase in this with the Bush administration. Now let's talk about the current status in the United States and Texas. So, like I previously mentioned, these 2 points connect. The federal funding goes mostly to abstinence only programs, and there is no current federal funding for any comprehensive sex ed programs. So, like I had previously mentioned, basically, basically, the people that have sex ed programs, so like any state that has an organization that has comprehensive sex ed programs, they're usually funded by other organizations, such as the Personal Responsibility Educational Program. So they fund to states, because there's no federal funding for any comprehensive sex ed programs. They only fund abstinence only programs. So now what's going on in Texas? In Texas district, according to FUGS, they have accepted fundings for abstinence programs. So basically, um, Texas districts, they get to choose whether they take the money or not for abstinence programs, and most of the districts do take it since they only offer funding for abstinence programs and not for comprehensive sexual education. My opinion is that yes, comprehensive sexual education should be taught. Now, let's talk about why. My first reason is the overload of evidence. There is so much evidence proving that it results against teen pregnancy, um, that it results against less sexually transmitted infections and less unprotected sex. And there are plenty of studies, and compared to the studies that there exist of not reducing anything. Um, Also because the opposing side kind of bases it off of morals, if you notice, like they're based on their religious views, their traditionalistic ideas, but these should not be pushed upon or implemented upon anyone. Um, they prevent a lot of risk enduring factors, like I mentioned before, teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, um, and unprotected sex, because unprotected sex ultimately is the root of most problems. So, education is safety. Education is safety. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It's a quote by Nelson Mandela that I love so much because it is true. When you're educated about something, you are not only understanding a singular idea, but you're understanding a very complex topic. And the fact that it's allowing you to understand sexual education, you now have the power to know the repercussions of the harmful actions and to know pretty much how to handle situations like these. So, yes, definitely comprehensive sex education should be taught. And my sources cited, of course, the Advocates for Youth, which um it was my source which had a lot of information for yes, my Family Watch International, like I said, for no, because they believe that it has harmful effects on children, and the CX profile to look at the statistics. And I hope that you overall enjoyed this presentation. I hope that I informed you about comprehensive sex education and why it should be taught, and I hope that you have picked your stance after this information. Thank you